Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for. Another episode of the Cloud Gambit. I'm your host, William. I'm just a leaf in a sea of leaves this fall season, blowing wherever the wind takes me, occasionally in a gutter, but mostly just vibing with zero direction. But with me is my incredible co-host, Yvonne Sharp. Yes, Sharp by name, Sharp by nature, and just sharp enough to know that I didn't plan this introduction very well. How are you doing today, Yvonne?
Good. It's fall here, and so the trees are turning, and there are leaves blowing all over the place. And we are either celebrating or mourning the success of our football teams, depending on who we cheer for. So, yeah, and we're ramping up for a holiday season. So, how are things in your world? William?
Good. I kind of like the fall. I love, it's not freezing, but it's not humid. And I like going out and throwing on a good audiobook or a podcast and like leaf blowing. It's kind of therapeutic, seeing all the different colors and just walking around and, getting a break from sitting and such. So I did a lot of leaf blowing yesterday.
We have not yet introduced our guest today. And let me tell you, you're in for a treat. We have the illustrious Russ White with us, the only person I know who has a recreational PhD. If you are a network engineer who's been around for any length of time, you've seen his books, you have participated in certification programs that he's launched, and you have in some way consumed his content, whether you've known it or not. So, Russ, we are thrilled to have you with us here today.
Oh, now I'm all red and embarrassed.
I think, honestly, there's a few of your books on the shelf behind me. Probably, probably half of them are authored by Russ White.
So my wife
red one right there, yeah.
So my wife was telling me that when she was a kid, they had a cartoon that she watched. I don't know whether she watched it or saw it, about the fall time from a leaf's perspective. And the poor leaf is on the tree and he's losing his grip and eventually he falls and he's like falling. Then he gets to the ground and there's all these dead leaves around him and he's like, no. And then some kid comes along and jumps in the pot,
That's like a dystopian 80s children's story. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. It's like that level of dystopian stuff.
If I read that to my daughter, she might cry. It might be a good social experiment.
On that happy note, kick us off, William.
Yeah, so I think we had a few topics that we were like loosely thinking about. Talking through, but I think the first one was all this ham jam craziness that just started popping up the last few days about OpenAI seeking a government backstop for the massive amount of infrastructure they need to build. So I'll link. I don't have the article open in front of me, so I'll link a few of them in the show notes. But basically, the point of what's happening is OpenAI is basically seeking government guarantees for financing deals to basically acquire, I guess, chips for the, as they do their data center build outs, which would, I guess for them, they see it as like substantially like lower financing costs and like increase in, I don't even know if this is a real thing, like loan to value ratios or something along those lines. I mean, that's the way I see it in my head. But this is basically essentially asking the government to de-risk private investment, like private capital investment, by standing behind the debt, which to me, and I'm not a finance person by any sense of the word, but to me, it just sounds a lot like how the federal government backs like mortgages or student loans, things like that.
So it's interesting because if you go way back in history and you look at how the government financed railroad, and they basically financed railroads, the intercontinental railroad system and stuff like this, or the intercontinental, whatever you're going to call it, the golden spike and everything else. There's a great book about this called There's Nothing Like It in the World, by the way, in case you're interested in going and reading something about this thing. What they basically did was they said, if you build a railroad, we will give you right of way on both sides that it's so wide that you can build entire cities on the right of way. So they basically backed building the railroads with land that the U.S. government owned. And then I think, how did that turn out? Well, it turned out in some ways very good. We ended up with a national rail system that was very good. But the Golden Spike itself and the first transcontinental railroad was a financial disaster. And a bunch of people just made a lot of money and took it and did nothing because they had all this land. And some people actually became broke over it because, so I think this is one of those situations where the federal government may step into it if they do, and they might be very helpful in some places, but there's always trade-offs. There will be problems that this will cause in producing this kind of a backstop because you're distorting a market. And you're distorting a market that I worry about to start with. The whole AI market. Like this is disturbing to me where this market is right now.
Well, I'm off the heels of, I've just read Andrew Ross Sorkin's book on 1929. I've realized I think a word and say the wrong word, but I read the book 1929, which is fabulous. First of all, it's very narrative nonfiction, which is one of my favorites, like Eric Larson or any of those other kind of. The Wager is also a really good narrative nonfiction book if you're into that genre. But, it really talks about the people of the crash of 1929. And I learned a lot. First of all, that is, you can get to a point where government intervention is necessary. And for those of us who lived through the 2008 crisis, we heard all of the fallout from the government backing the banks and all of that. And there are good arguments to be made that there are times and places for that to happen, to prop up an industry and an economy, to prevent, frankly, broad suffering. But as I look at where we are, I really struggle to make an argument that OpenAI failing as an entity is going to cause broad suffering. Now, is there likely to be a bubble that pops and some economic consequences for that? Sure. I think we're going to see a downturn regardless because things are so hot economically, at least in the market. But, as a taxpayer and also somebody who's working in an industry that's, really personally benefited from the current, rise in stock prices and revenue that's being generated, I look at this and I go, I'm struggling to understand why this is a good idea. I have other thoughts, but I won't talk the whole time.
To that point, too, I think it was their CFO that basically said in one of these articles that OpenAI could essentially be profitable now, but chooses aggressive investment over profitability. And the thing that kind of, when I hear stuff like that and then I see mention of a government backstop, the thing that just makes my brain spin, hopefully you don't see smoke coming out of my ears, is when government basically absorbs this downside risk and these private investors kind of really capture the upside returns. This basically leads to, or not leads to, it can lead to, but it encourages excessive risk taking. So if OpenAI is already admitting it could be profitable, but chooses not to be, why should taxpayers subsidize any of these choices? And, government-backed financing gives OpenAI, a super competitive advantage over Anthropic or Google potentially, while other AI companies compete on pure market terms. Why shouldn't OpenAI have to? This sort of makes it to where the government is picking a winner rather than letting markets allocate the capital efficiently and figure things out, like who's who in the zoo.
Well, there's also this perspective, and I think part of the reason that people think about, actually doing this kind of deal is that, if America doesn't win the AI race, America is doomed. And I wonder, is there an AI race? and whichever country loses it. I mean, there are such things as Pyrrhic victories, okay, folks, where you invest a lot of money in something trying to win something that eventually doesn't really make a lot of difference. And so I think we're trying to predict a lot of stuff that I just don't know. Like, are we actually following on the right side of the prediction? That it's not that easy to say we should spend billions of dollars on this. It's like the quantum show that George Michelson came on the Hedge and talked about, right? We're investing millions of dollars in quantum, solving the quantum crypto problem. The quantum crypto problem could be 20 years off, and we're trying to solve it today. And like, well, is that really a wise use of resources and time and money? Or are there other problems we need to solve? And so I don't know.
Well, and you asked that, and the thing that was on my mind is like, what problem are we trying to solve, right? And I'm sure that, like, for OpenAI, they're trying to find ways to de-risk folks, from investing in them with capital. And I understand their desire to do that. I mean, it's a capital intensive business. I don't think it stands to reason that giving the government providing some sort of backstop is going to make them innovate faster or is going to change anything. I think one of the reasons we're so concerned about China is, and I'm not remembering, help me, William, the name of their latest models that came out of China. Those models were, DeepSeek. Deep fake was the term in my mind. I'm like, I know that's not it. So yes, DeepSeek. The constraints that they're under actually fueled the innovation. So I don't think that the argument, hey, give us all the things that we think we need, will innovate faster. I think that's a logical fallacy. And I think if you listen to some of the words, the founders of OpenAI, they believe that they are doing this for the good of the world. And they will talk about that. Don't know any of them. I have a hard time believing that they're really driven by altruistic good of the world motives.
Well, but don't ever think that because somebody thinks they're being driven by the altruistic for the world, the results are going to get there. That's why I called my PhD dissertation Unintended Dystopia. These people weren't building something they thought was bad. They built something they thought was wonderful. And it's just turned out to be like, yeah, there are some good things about it. But yeah, there are a lot of bad things about it too.
Yeah. And how can the power infrastructure even, I keep hearing, and I mean, this is a true statement, I believe, like as far as LLMs and sort of this new era that we find ourselves in with AI and productizing things, we're in the early days for sure. It's very early days. Yes, I agree with that. So if we're in the early days and we are facing the power crisis that we're facing at the moment, okay, like what does mainstream adoption look like? How much power, like the power problem is just gigantic. I don't know how you.
And what happens when we build these huge data centers dedicated to nothing but processing these models? And we're talking, a single rack is 250 gig now, 250 gigawatts. Like, I'm sorry, folks, there are not many houses that have 250 kW. I'm sorry, 250 kW running to the house, and you have 250 kW racks. Okay, so we're building these data centers that consume all this power. We're ramping up power production, all this other stuff. When the driver, as Yvonne talks about with DeepSeek, is going to be models that run on smaller hardware. Like that's going to be the innovation that actually makes AI break the dam. So we're investing a lot of money in something that in the long term, I don't know, does it really get us to the innovation we need? Or is it, I don't know. I find it all very disturbing.
I think we're just over our skis. Like, I think AI is real. I think it's going to change how we work, whether we want that or not. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there'll be lots of good things that happen. I think there will be negative consequences as well. I'm not, I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's very real. At the same time, we are just in such a hurry. Like we got to let the market cook a little bit. We got to let the solutions develop. We've got to let industries determine where the value is going to be and what the actual utilization is going to look like. And subsidizing that at this particular point in time, it's just too early. And I don't know that it'll ever be necessary because I think folks who can make money on it will, and that will drive the investment. And I at my heart, I'm a free market capitalist. So
yeah, I'm actually I'm actually a little concerned or disturbed about some of the implications of it actually working as well as they say it will. That may sound strange, but
you mean getting to like an AGI or a super intelligence?
No, even. So when I was in the Air Force many years ago, I had a friend whose father was a taxi driver. And I say all this for a reason. He was a taxi driver. He was a really nice guy. And he drove a taxi for a living in Philadelphia. Sometimes he would work in New York City, depending on the demand and stuff like that. And he made a decent living being a taxi driver. That's what he did. And there are many taxi drivers in London and New York City and Philly who have raised families on being a taxi driver. And now you can't even pay for your own stinking gas as an Uber driver, it feels like. Like, basically what happened is we were paying taxi drivers because they were intelligent enough to, first of all, figure out who their fare was. They drive down the street. They don't pick up every fare. They do risk analysis dynamically, and they pick up a fare depending on, like, does that person look like they're going to pay their fare, blah, blah, blah. Then there's also the intelligence of this time of day, that street is usually blocked because there is a church service. So there is something there. And knowing the city and knowing how to get from point A to point B, all of that intelligence has been sucked out. It's put into an app. And now you're not paying your driver for the intelligence anymore. You're paying them just to be present in the car. All right. People seem to think that plumbers and electricians won't get there. I'm sorry, they will. People seem to think that construction workers won't. No, they will. There will come a point where you have a pair of glasses or a phone. You walk in, you take a picture of the reading on the AC system, and it says, go to supply point 5A964 in your truck, pull the part, and let me give you a video instruction of how to replace it. How much are you going to make as an AC tech when that happens? I mean, I know from experience, it guts career fields. I was a double E for many years in the U.S. Air Force. It gutted the electronic engineering field when it got to the point where you walk up to a terminal and say self-diagnosis, and boom, it spits out the supply point to go get the part from and a video of how to put it in. Like,
yeah,
that worries me.
I hear that. I think there's a supply demand thing. I mean, if you were doing any housework during COVID, what you learned was, and I had somebody come and do something in my basement, and I went around and did talked to a few really good contractors because it was skilled. It wasn't just a vanilla job. It was skilled, skilled tile work, and the cost was double because they were in COVID. And in order to get anything done sooner, which is, I ended up doing this job myself because I couldn't wait. In order to get it done sooner, it was like, okay, another 15,000 and we'll move you in front of like 3 other people. So there's such a supply and demand imbalance of certain things that I think it does, in certain places, it does swing back the other way. But like what you're saying, for the things that you can just, okay, multimodal stuff in your pocket, you can take pictures, take videos, and then on demand, it's going to provide you with exactly what you need. Do this, to where, my grandma could probably follow these directions. That's a problem.
That worries me more than AGI, by the way, for a lot of social reasons, but that worries me more than AGI. But
I just want a robot to do my laundry. I'm willing to take any other trade-off if I can get a robot to do my laundry.
Yvonne, bringing us back to earth and practicality.
Well, that's the next. This robotic stuff is kind of, I don't know, we don't have to go there. But one thing I did want to talk to you about, Russ, and something I shared with you before we started recording, what sort of spawned this for me recently. But I think, and this is like something we haven't really discussed on this podcast. This is new. No, we've never touched this on past episodes, but something I'm kind of seeing quite a bit.
Music. There should be music right there.
Dun, dun, dun.
I will insert some. But I'm beginning to see quite a bit. It appears that like this, the newer generation coming up that wants to land in tech, there's this priority to first become like an influencer and then sort of backfill your skills as you go along. So you basically have folks that are just trying to optimize for followers and engagement on social media, which happens to be maybe where they live. And, they're the other day, like, I wonder if I could find this just to send to you all after the fact, but there was someone that had created some BGP content. And then at the end of their video, they were like, and you know what? I haven't even configured BGP on a real network, which I thought was funny because the video was actually kind of good. And I don't mean this to be snarky or funny because I think it's kind of sad. But are you seeing this trend at all? And if so, how would you describe it?
So I think it's McLuhan. I can't remember his name exactly, but he said a long time ago in his books, now he didn't live in social media age. He lived in television age. And he said that every media has a resonance. Print has a resonance of like learning and narrative. Television has a resonance of entertainment. People have probably heard me say this before. Now, I would extend that and say that social media has the resonance of performance. And so if you live in a world full of performers, then everything becomes performative, including your technical career. So yes, it's absolutely true. I think people have a different mindset. When I went into Double E and then into computer networking, I did it because I enjoy solving problems and because I enjoy helping people. I never once thought about becoming an influencer, right?
I'm going to be famous on the internet someday.
Yeah, exactly. The internet didn't exist, so I couldn't be famous on the non-existent internet. Essentially, right? And even when I did my first book for Pearson, all that happened was Pearson had developed a new imprint called Cisco Press, and they had gotten their first book, Calabi's book, out. Internet Routing Architectures, I think was the name of it. It's a great book. Sam Malabi's a great guy. I've talked to him and stuff. Anyway, and they said, now we have a problem. We have no follow-on books. We created a whole imprint and now we don't know what to do with ourselves, right? So they sent this email out inside of all of Cisco. If you have any ideas for a book, please let us know. So Don Slice and Alvaro and I were in the escalation team. Well, Alvaro was over in the ISP experts team, but it's just the ISP escalation team. And we looked at each other and we said, you know what? We could write a book. Like this doesn't sound all that hard.
Famous last words. How hard could it be?
How hard could it be? So we wrote a book and it turned out to be a really big seller. And again, nothing any of us anticipated. It was just like, let's go do our job. Let's go help people and things fall out of it. And yeah, we're happy things fall out of it, but our goal was not that. And so I'll bring another piece of philosophy into this that Yvonne in particular is going to appreciate. C.S. Lewis, I don't remember which book it was, in one of his lectures or books or something, and I have to go find it because I use this all the time and I should be able to actually quote the chapter and page number and stuff, says that when you put first things first, you get first things and second things. When you put second things first, you get neither the first things nor the second things. And that is absolutely true. If you put influence first, you aren't going to get a career or the influence. If you put your career first, you just say, I'm going to go help people. I'm going to solve hard problems. This is what I do. I enjoy this. Then whether or not the influence comes, the influence will either be small, when you'll get influence. The influence will either be small on your team, in your company, or it will be big. But you know what? Whatever. It just is what it is, you know?
Yeah. I love that framing. You said something there. You said the way that you laid out this performative way of doing it. It made me, when you said that, I immediately thought of the words, the compound noun, thought leader. Because I used to, you see thought leader a lot. And thought leader, there are thought leaders out there that I truly believe are thought leaders. But the true thought leaders out there, in every industry has them, that have this far-reaching credibility, this far-reaching influence. It's usually based on this level of expertise that was driven by many years experience doing the most unglamorous, hard technical work for 15, 20, 30 years. And then you see folks waltzing out of university that might have a lot of followers on the Instagram, and they consider themselves a thought leader. And that you just kind of made me separate these groups of folks. You have thought leaders and thought performers now. So
yeah,
that's a new category.
Yeah.
And the more you have them, the more it dilutes. That's why thought leader has such a bad, just a vibe when you talk to people or you see it on a LinkedIn another thought leader. Okay. It doesn't mean what it
media influencer. Oh, you're a social media I'm an influencer. Just stop.
Well, and I've heard the phrase in other arenas. I've heard folks say that what you win people with is what you keep them with. And I think it's, if and really what they're saying is, if you win people with outrage, if you win them with, crass humor, if you win them with, anything like that, that's what you're going to have to keep doing to keep your audience, first of all. And I think, a lot of people don't understand the trade-offs that you have to make to actually make money, as an influencer. They see these people come up, they see them on their feeds, they see them say stuff. But I know a lot of people that are really influential, in especially networking and technical social media, and it's not their day job, right? And so for all of us here, we have a day job that actually pays the bills. This is kind of a hobby, because we enjoy the conversation. We enjoy being part of the community. It fuels us in some other way. But I also think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of fame on its own doesn't pay the bills. You gotta have a plan for how you're going to do that. And there's a limit to what you can know without getting your hands dirty. And folks kind of have to figure out what's your end game? What do you want to be in 10 years or 20 years? And what if the platform changes? What if, what if there's I think a lot of us came up in the era of blogs and of audio podcasts, and now videos, all the rage. And, you have to decide whether you want to get on that train or not. And I just think the idea that I want to be an influencer without any expertise is a little silly. There's one more thing I want to say, though. There is a genre of the learner influencer. And if you come to the conversation hey, I'm new and I'm learning this, and I'm going to share what I learn as I go and bring you along on a journey with me. I think that's a particularly effective model. But as you mature, your audience will mature and it will get smaller. Because as you grow in expertise, there are fewer people who are going to have that same desire for the depth. And so that's something also to keep in mind.
Yeah, that learner model's pretty. So, like, we all know Alexis, and she started out by doing that. She had these like really short. Originally, they were like Cisco videos going through product lines and just things like she was learning on a daily basis, which it was useful content, and that's I think where her sort of popularity started. And there's definitely like she does that great, and she has a good amount of influence, through her platform now.
And she's been able to leverage that into a really great career. And I'm a huge fan. So I don't want to be heard saying like, oh, it's never possible and it's a bad idea and all of that. Cause I don't think that's true. I think it's way harder than people realize it is. And it's actually work. It's a job to accomplish what somebody has accomplished at her level. Right. It may not be the easier path than working a day job, depending on your skill level and your likability and your communication skills and all of those things.
Well, just think of, probability. Like how many folks are posting things on YouTube that have that aspiration. They want to be an influencer. They want to go viral. Your competition is gigantic. If you look at a LinkedIn job post and there's 100 other people that have applied, okay. You're
1,000, 10,000.
competing against, yeah. But if you look at this influencer thing, you're competing with a lot of folks out there.
1 million, 2 million.
Airtime.
Yeah. It's really. I still remember the day that I was talking to Ethan, and Ethan said, "I have come to the realization that I'm not a technical engineer any longer. I am a publisher. And I need to reframe my entire concept around what I do for a living and how that works because I am now a publisher." And like, now at the time, I thought that's kind of sad because Ethan's a good engineer, but, but it's a facing of reality, right? It's just the way it is. That's
wisdom, really.
Yeah, it is.
Because a lot of us don't want to step out of the thing that made us, like I have that, I don't even know if this is imposter. I don't even know what it is, but you don't, I have this thing in the back of my head, not to get all, psychology here, but I feel that if I give up technical skills as I'm doing other things, then I'm going to be less valuable working for a company. So that's why I continue to lab. That's why, we were talking about this new lab rig I built, all the junk in my basement that my wife would love to see thrown with chains into the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and I continue to do this though, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if 5 more years, if I don't know this stuff, I'm not going to be able to get a job. This is what makes me valuable, and it's hard to let that go.
And it's probably true, unfortunately, in IT,
Yeah, it is, because management is usually the first thing to go. So, hey, if I pivot into being a poor manager, then there's going to be writing on the wall there, and I can already see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I've kind of taken the opposite track, right? Like I have kind of looked at the sea of opportunity in my world, and I think the decision that I've come to is that just like we need great engineers, we also need great leaders. And I feel like I've been part of so many organizations that have struggled because they haven't had great leaders. And so that's the path that I've been following. And you do have to at some point make those decisions, right? And their choices. But for me, what we do here is an opportunity to stay connected to the community, is an opportunity to understand what's going on in the world. It's the opportunity to build a network of people. But ultimately, I am on a track where I am trying to lead technical people to be the best they can be and to build great things and to do great work. And I think that is incredibly important. If you've ever worked for a horrible leader, you know how important it is to have a good one. And, that's the current journey I'm on. And I think sometimes people see a thing and they're like, oh, that looks really interesting. It's like the kid who wants to be a fireman, but doesn't really like it when it's hot, that doesn't really want to climb ladders, that doesn't, like they're not thinking about the mechanics of the job. And I think at some point you got to step back and go, what are the mechanics of this? And is it really what I want to do with my life? Or are there other things? And for some people, it's going to be the right answer. And I think Alexis is somebody who's shown, has, sort of demonstrated a really great path to follow if that's what you want to do. It's hard and it's work. It's not, I'm going to show up and turn on my camera and blather on about nothing and then, profit.
Yeah. Something that I don't know, like one thing that I always go back, like when I look, I can only go by my lived experiences, of course. I know this is like pretty unpopular to say. I'm going to say it anyway. My best learning experiences with anything to do with technology were actually in office. First of all, and I'm a fan of working from home today. Oh, do I love working from home? Oh, do I love not ironing every single day to go into the city? I love it. It's great. But at the same time, like when I was in the office and I was younger, and when you're younger, you have a lot more time than you think you have. As you get older and you take on a lot more responsibility, you don't have as much time. Throw in a family and your time really you just don't have much of it. And when I was younger, and I remember this leader who was ex-military that I worked for, he would come and ask me a question, or he would, grill me about a change I made or something. And if I didn't give him an adequate response, he'd say, explain this to me right now. Come over to this whiteboard, explain it to me. And I would not get away from that whiteboard until I knew. And he knew that I knew, which was the first few times this happened in my mind, I was just like, I'm getting fired. This is crazy. I'm gonna have a box tomorrow. But looking back at it after the fact, I realized that those were some of the most valuable learning experiences I ever had, because I'm sitting here with literally an expert on something that I'm not an expert at. And he's teaching it to me, and then he's making me teach it back to him pretty much on a whiteboard. And those were like super high impact scenarios in my career. And that's something that's kind of like, I don't want to say dissipating. I think, and I'm not encouraging, I'm not saying you have to go in the office. And maybe it was just the way that I learned. It might have just had something to do with the way I operate. But, that world seems to not be the world we live in anymore, I guess. Maybe I'm just getting old.
Yeah, you probably are. But, that's okay.
Well, and I think, I've talked to Russ enough to know that, like, the other side of that coin is that there are lots of earlier in career folks who won't hardly receive that level of training, instruction, or correction. That so I'm saying it out loud for you, Russ. But and so that's a two-way street. Those of us who've been around a bit have to be willing to put the time and energy into patiently educating, folks earlier in career. And then those folks have to be willing to learn the lessons. But, at the end of the day, like, none of this is easily acquired.
See, here's what I find a lot of times is that people, like William was saying, people want to learn enough to get what's ahead of them done, to get the work done, get the task done, not to solve the problem, not to understand how to solve the problem. Maybe I just lived in a different world, but even in Double E, when I was coming up as an electronic engineer, we didn't get away with any, like, even in my family life, because my whole family was Double E's of some type or another, or engineers of some type or another. It's kind of sad. My mom writes code. What am I going to say?
I'm just thinking baby Russ with a soldering iron, like
it's really,
burn
it's
the house
true.
down.
It's absolutely true. I had a 40-meter rig sitting on a thing. But anyway, whatever. So, that it wasn't a matter of, yes, you turn this knob to make that work that way until it does this. That's not the way it works. The explanation that I always got was when you turn the knob, you are moving the inductor in. Now, it's a circular inductor with two pieces, and you're moving the inductor, which changes the filter on the input side of the receiver circuitry that this is the type of explanation I got, right?
You were getting the why you turn, when you turn the knob, this is what happens, not just turn the knob and put it here and then it'll all work. Yeah.
And it was never acceptable when I was a double E in the Air Force to just say, well, I replaced that part and it worked. No, stop.
Yeah.
Explain why.
You've been around the networking block for a little while, through VXLAN, EVPN, Yang, Open
Banyan Vines,
all this stuff.
Nowhere.
And now, everyone's it's AI driven this, AI driven that, and everything. One of the things that I see younger technologists struggle with is a result of just having too much out there, saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, on whether it's on social media, whether it's in their schooling, whether it's what they're trying to come to terms with. And they don't know where to start because there's a million things. And when I started, it wasn't like that. It was like, hey, you got these books. Start reading the book and put together this thing. There wasn't a ton of, outside stimuli that would distract me and cause problems. What would you recommend for folks that are young and up and coming and might be listening to us doomsdayers talking about this stuff? What would you recommend to them as far as getting started? How do you get started and stay focused?
Yeah, for me, the answer is always learn the theory. And people don't like that answer, but it's still the truth to me, is learn the theory. Learn one thing. There are seasons in life. There is time to learn things. You may not know everything today. It's okay. You have 20 years. Okay. You'll learn it over time. And don't think you're going to become an architect or be able to consider yourself an architect when you're 25 or 26 because, whatever. Although I guess some people could do that because, whatever. There is something that goes with age and spending a lot of time fixing things and doing different things. So learn the theory. The second thing I always say is don't narrow yourself. When I first started I got out of double E, of course, I got into networking because I was stringing cables. Basically, that's where it came from, is I was doing cabling stuff for networks. I was just doing double E and I was doing telco stuff. And they said, well, go string this cable. So I went and strung that cable. And I'm like, what is this for? This is for Novell Netwear. Okay, what's Novell Netwear? What is that? Why should I be stringing cable for that? That doesn't make any sense to me. So, but anyway, as I say, but while I was even in that first learning phase, I learned how to put my own computer together. Kind of a non-skill any longer, but at the time it was a big skill to have, to know SCSI and, IDE versus MFM versus RLL, all that stuff. You had to know all that. And then I also taught myself C and Pascal. So I didn't just focus on the protocols. I actually focused on, not just focused, but I tried to learn a variety of things. And I really think the innovation and the experience and the growth happens at the intersections of things, not at the very depth of things. So maybe that's crazy, but that's kind of the way I look at the world.
Well, I like it. So you're not, go ahead, Yvonne.
I was just going to say, for me, the thing that I think helped, and I didn't even realize that I was doing this differently at the time, but I really wanted to understand why it worked the way that it worked. So what are the principles underneath that make this thing work, as opposed to just click this box, do this. So when you click this box, it turns on this protocol, which enables this, which makes this happen. Like, follow that line all the way to the bottom. I mean, every now and then you'll do it. Yeah, when I do this, this happens and it works and I don't understand why. But it's that embracing your curiosity and understanding all of, and unpacking those layers. And what I didn't realize, I'll say, is that all of those things, those principles I was learning, were cyclical and would come back around, and really were more fundamental than I realized at the time. Like, I was just trying to understand why things worked, because frankly, as a woman, I was always afraid somebody would grill me and would not believe me. And so I felt like I needed to demonstrate that I understood what was really happening. And ultimately that served me really well over time.
I love that. So you heard it here first. If you're starting out in tech, don't start with the LinkedIn newsletters or Instagram. Start with reading all the volumes of TCP/IP Illustrated, and you're on your path to success.
Is that what we
said? I'm an AI summary engine.
Wow. Okay.
No, that was really good.
Full circle.
I think, yeah, that's both great. From both of you, that's fantastic thoughts and advice there. Do you got anything? I know we're at the top of the hour, Yvonne. Do you have anything else?
I think I'm good.
Okay,
nothing that won't keep.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Since nobody knows who you are, Russ, where can people find you on the internet? Are you making the dancing videos on TikTok yet? That would probably go viral, to be honest, if you started doing dancing videos on TikTok.
Viral for the horribleness of it all. But anyway, only if you dance with your book in your hand, so that you can write it off as a business expense. So the Hedge Podcast, of course, Rule 11.tech. Those are the two big places. I'm around on LinkedIn from time to time, and on X as Routing Geek, but not very often. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm actually pretty easy to find.
Awesome. And everything that you heard in this episode will be linked in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to our prestigious guest, Mr. Russ White, for joining us.
Have a good one.